What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. My name is Chris, and I'm joined by two of the greats in this industry, Jurg and Dame. Fellas, how are we this week?
Guys, you already know what time of week it is when you're listening to this podcast. It is time for you to sit down or stand up and be active, depending on how you listen to us, and listen to the most thought-provoking, funniest, and most two of the three co-hosts being at each other's necks for the next hour or so of podcast time here on YouTube and Spotify. The Somewhat Sports Podcast, the best sports podcast on YouTube. We're here once again.
I can never match that intro, so here I am. It's 3 fantasy drafts in, the biggest fantasy drafts tonight. That's where my life's at.
That's it. All right.
That's all I got. What else?
I respect it
Nothing
because
interesting in my life.
I respect it because I'm not that big of a fantasy player, so I fully respect it.
Yeah, Damien does like 5 of them a year, so I don't think anyone's at that level. But neither here nor there. Look, guys, we're recording on Thursday, which means 1 week from today, it's officially the start of the NFL season. I'm elated. I know everyone in this podcast is ecstatic about it. We're just excited all around. I think the first game is the Bills versus the Rams, possible Super Bowl matchup there. My God, I'm excited. I'm excited. So MLB, we're getting to the nitty grits. We're getting down to the bottom of the season, and the playoffs are right around the corner. So close yet so far. And then hockey news, Jurg. I'm assuming there's not much since you didn't bring up in the group chat.
Yeah, I'm still kind of like waiting, looking, and also trying to plan out. It's kind of hard depending on when we record, but trying to see what I can do in terms of having another person on for when we eventually do a little bit of an NHL season preview, and also trying to see how I want to do it. I'm like such a big hockey nerd. I wanted to go division by division, but we'll probably just split via conferences for each episode because it's a lot to go after and review. But it's all in the works. It's all under construction right now.
Okay. All right. So I guess similar to the NBA, when we have a plethora of news, we'll cover it at once. So when that happens, Jurg will let us know, and then we'll cover it. But yeah, look, like I said, NFL's around the corner. We want to do something NFL related this week. So we are bringing back officially the Bullish or Bearish game. Now, for those that don't know, we have done this game before. We're gonna switch it. We're gonna switch it up a little bit. So what I'm gonna do? This is the game. This is the rules. What I'm gonna do? I'm going to have 10 statements or 10 storylines rather that I have made up, and Jurg and Dame will tell me for each one whether they are bullish on it, meaning they're optimistic and they're leaning towards agreeing to that statement, or they're bearish on it, meaning that they're skeptical and they're leaning towards disagreeing with that statement. A little bit of crypto talk, not the best thing to talk about considering where crypto's at these days, but that's the game. So bullish means you're up, bearish meaning you're down on the statement. So yeah, I made these 10 statements last night. You could call them storylines or narratives, rather, whatever you want to say. But yeah, so Jurg and Dame will each go one at a time. Fellas, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
But what was that? That was the weakest yeah I've ever heard in my life.
Dame,
Jesus.
Dame, you good, bro?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jesus Lord. All right. Okay, whatever. All right, so fellas, let's do this. Okay. Who should we start off with? Jurg or Dame?
Take your pick.
I don't know. Dame, I don't even know if Dame's ready, to be honest. But
I am ready.
We'll start off hot. We'll start off hot. We'll start off with Jurg. So, the first statement I'm going to say, bullish or bearish, Tom Brady and the Bucs current odds at a Super Bowl appearance. Are you bullish on Tom Brady and the Bucs making the Super Bowl right now?
I feel like I have to be bullish on it because
It's Tom Brady.
Tom Brady's not even the number one reason, honestly. I just think how wide open the NFC as a whole is. I think that really plays into Brady and his team's favor right now. Look, they're not perfect, right? Jensen is out for the season. Tristan Wirfs got hurt recently. Now, while we know it's not super long term, I don't like the fact that the offensive linemen are already like feeling this pain early on. When we saw in the playoffs last year, like 3/5 of that offensive line was suffering from injury, and one of their offensive linemen retired from last season. I think it was Ali Marpet who did. So There are some issues there. Of course, Gronk didn't come back, but they signed Julio, and that defense as a whole, it's going to be really interesting to see how they perform. It's a bit of a transition for that defense because a couple veterans that were there years ago, like Ndamukong Suh and JPP, aren't there anymore. But they've brought in some other pieces, including some other veterans. I think Akeem Hicks is a big name that they hope can perform because I think just a couple years ago he had like a massive 17 sack season or something like that. So like there's still pieces on this team. I think they need to put it together. I'm bullish ultimately at the end of the day because there's only one team that could really kind of challenge them in the NFC South, and that's the New Orleans Saints. And there are still questions about them, depending on the quarterback situation. Is it going to be famous Jameis? Is it going to be Andy Dalton? Is Taysom Hill going to be there, or is Ian Book going to show us, just how good Notre Dame quarterbacks really are in the NFL, which is not good at all. Like it's really a revolving door of guys for the Saints, but and me personally, I still have questions about Dennis Allen and what he could do. I think Sean Payton not being there is going to make more of a difference than people are giving credit. So there's that. The rest of the NFC South is nothing. NFC North, I think the Packers are the only real threat, but we know the Packers have to do a lot of transitioning themselves. NFC East, we all went through it. A lot of people are saying one of three different teams, mainly one or two different, but one of three different teams could win that division. So to me, there's no real threat there. And then, of course, the NFC West. The Cardinals and 49ers are playoff caliber teams, but you have questions. One of those teams completely collapsed last season. One of those teams is going with a second-year quarterback who is essentially having his rookie season because he didn't really play most of last year. So, and the Rams, of course, the defending Super Bowl champions. The Rams are the only team I can definitively think will beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers like thoroughly in a playoff game. The Packers might be able to do it, but that'll be a judgment to wait on until we actually see the season play out. I can't make that judgment on Green Bay right now. So as of right now, I have the Bucs as the second best team, and by that logic, you'd think they'd be in the NFC Championship game. And if you make it that far, you have a chance of going to the Super Bowl. So I'm very bullish on them, and it doesn't even have to do with the fact that Tom Brady is their quarterback. But I will say this: they're like Brady. I don't know. I'm getting a feeling like this be the season where we finally see like a chink in that armor. I feel like I know that question's been asked for like 7 years now, but I don't know why. A part of me is thinking like, are we finally going to see that happen this year? So I'm probably going to be more interested to see that more than anything else. But yeah, I'm bullish on Tampa Bay going back to the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it mostly has to do exactly what you said. Is just that the NFC is so wide open, and I do believe we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I do have the Rams as the best team in the NFC, and they're the team to beat. But then besides them, I don't really see anyone else that really stands out as a title contender, a real true favorite to come out outside of the Bucks. Just because the Bucks do, you just have to give Tom Brady that respect that he deserves. That he's done it over and over for all these years. Even when people doubted him, even when people thought he was washed, he was done with. He came back and he won a Super Bowl. So it's hard for me to doubt him now, even though I really want to. He still has a great offense. The offensive line, yes, there's a lot of trouble there. But you can say that for a lot of these other teams in the NFC as well. They have their own issues. But you still have Mike Evans, you signed Julio, Chris Godwin's coming back. You have Cameron Bray and Kyle Rudolph as your tight ends. Eventually, at some point, Gronk's going to come back. Fournette as your running back. And you still have that stout defense as well. So this team is built to win. It's just all going to come down to Tom Brady at the end of the day. If he shows any kind of downfall or decline, it's going to be tough for them to compete with the Rams. But if he's the same quarterback we saw for the past 2 years with the Bucs, I give him as good of a chance as anyone else in the NFC to come out the NFC and go to the Super Bowl. So I'm bullish on the Bucs as well, and it all really has to do is just I have a hard time doubting Tom Brady after all these years. He's proven me wrong.
All right. Okay. Well, let's stick with the NFC, actually. The next statement is the Rams repeat and win the championship once again. Dame, what do we think? Bullish or bearish?
Yeah, I mean, like I just mentioned, the Rams, I have them as a title favorite. They won the title last year. I think they honestly have a near perfect team. They have a great offensive line. They have the running game, the quarterback, the wide receivers, the defense. From the defensive line to the pass rush to the secondary, they really have everything they need. And let's not even to mention Sean McVay at the helm. I think that just puts everything together. They lost Robert Woods, obviously, but they gained Allen Robinson, and I believe Allen Robinson is a better wide receiver than Robert Woods. And he's going to do a lot more things for the Rams than Robert Woods did. And then adding to a defense that already was headlined by Aaron Donald on the defensive line and Jalen Ramsey in the secondary. All you're missing is that one guy in the middle, and they went out and got one of the best middle linebackers of all time, and Bobby Wagner. So you really have a stout player and one of the best players of their generation at every level on that defense, which I think is huge. And then, of course, like I said, they were able to keep their offense together. Matthew Stafford's back. Cooper Kupp, they re-signed, and he's happy. Allen Robinson, Tyler Higbee, Cam Akers is back and healthy. We saw when he came back last year healthy in the playoffs. He did make a big impact. He was playing really well for them. And then you still have Darrell Henderson right behind him just in case he's not 100% or if they want to kind of split that backfield. So just all around from every level on the defense to that offense kind of all coming back together from last year and having Sean McVay, I think this is the team to beat in the NFC for sure, but maybe even in the entire NFL.
Yeah, I'm with Dame right there. I I tend to favor defending champions a lot, but especially to me in the recent years of defending champions across the sports, I felt like we've had some really strong ones. Most infamously, which set of champions was it? It was the 2020 champions for the Chiefs, Lakers, Dodgers, and I'm forgetting the last one, but I had predicted all four of those teams, I think, or at least three of the four to repeat, if healthy. And I think Tampa is the only one that that did me right there with the Lightning for hockey. So but for the most part, I feel like the Rams are such a strong team. I think the offense, you have Cooper Kupp now being joined by Allen Robinson. I think Sean McVay can work the running backs and tight ends well. The defense has a Hall of Famer at all three levels, plus other solid players around them. So well coached. What more can we say about it? Dame said everything. Like they're just such a good team, and you're hard again. I think you're hard pressed to find anyone in the NFC who can compete with them. I think this is very much a season where the NFC is the Rams for the taking, and it's really going to be all on them. I think their biggest challenge is going to come out the AFC. I right now I don't see a team on paper that to me can knock out the Rams in the NFC.
Okay. Next statement, Jurg. I'm going to stay with you. Bullish or bearish?
Mm-hmm.
The Packers make the NFC Conference Championship without Devontae Adams.
Oh man, it's so oh oh my god. I hate that I have to do this because I love Aaron Rodgers, but I also hate Green Bay management. So I'm torn here, but I have to go with bearish. Here's the thing: the Green Bay Packers defense, if they can continue to play as well as they were playing last season, I think we're underestimating the kind of playoff run they could go on. I think that defense, it played well in that playoff game last year. You know, you got to give them credit. The defense is, for once, is not the reason why the Packers lost in the playoffs. The fact that they added they kept Devondre Campbell, excuse me. They also kept Rasul Douglas, if I'm not mistaken. They added, I know a lot of people were being very critical of it, but I think the 2 first-round picks that they used on the Georgia players that they got from this past draft, like I defend those selections. I think their defense needed more depth in both the interior D lineman position and the linebacking core. I think those were both good selections by the management. Romeo Dobbs, I know Christian Watson was the second round receiver, but Romeo Dobbs has been great in practice and preseason. He's been, of all the young wide receivers, he's been the one that performed the best. I fell in love with him late in the draft process on another I think I had the Packers selecting him in like a 3-round mock that I did. So I was just a massive fan of Romeo Dobbs personally, and I think he's going to perform relatively well right off the gate for the Packers. I think there is potential for him and Watson. I think they could become a great duo, but I think it's a lot of expectations on a lot of young players. And David Bakhtiari himself is the ultimate difference. Like you talk about why the Packers offense has struggled in their recent playoff appearances the last 2 years. It's because of the David Bakhtiari injury. And I think it really just goes to show how pivotal, like people say that aside from quarterback, the next most important position is left tackle. There's a reason for that. Without David Bakhtiari, like, yes, they have the playoffs, the regular season success, but in the playoffs, you need your franchise left tackle there. It's that simple. So at the end of the day, I have to be bearish on it. I don't see a path right now for Green Bay. I don't see them beating the Rams. I really don't see them beating the Rams. Buccaneers, maybe. But again, like I said earlier when talking about Tampa Bay, I need to see how the season plays out, because if we still have receiving issues and the Packers do still make the playoffs, I think they're probably a one and done, depending on the opponent. If they face an NFC East team, I'll give them that game. But in terms of the other 2 top teams in the NFC, nah, I don't see it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm bearish on the Packers as well. I don't see them being better than the Bucks or the Rams, one way or another. I don't even give them a chance against either one of them. And then I still think they got to deal with the Eagles, Cowboys, and 49ers as well. So I see no path for them to make the NFC championship game. They're definitely not going to have a bye like they did last year. Last year they kind of were able to cruise because they didn't have to play that first week, and then they obviously played the Niners and they lost. This year I don't think they're going to have the ability to do that because I think their division got better and then they got worse. So these division games aren't going to be as easy for them. And obviously, if they got worse, it's gonna be harder for them to win games around the league as well. They have the Jets on their schedule, so they have an automatic loss right there.
Right.
But I think the Rams or Bucks are one of the two teams that are definitely going to have that one bye because it's one bye now in the new rules. So I think that's going to be tough for them to make it further because of that one game. And then obviously it's going to be hard for them to have all these home games as well. Having the one seed and having that bye, it all runs through Lambeau. But now, if they just win their division, they might just have one home game in that wild card weekend, and that's all. Then they're gonna have to travel somewhere else to play the Rams or the Bucks, and I don't think they're gonna be able to win that game. They have offensive line trouble, they have wide receiver trouble that Aaron Rodgers has publicly made clear that they have wide receiver troubles. Yeah, there's Darius Smith who left. I know they drafted to use both their first round picks on defensive guys, but neither one of them are Darius Smith, obviously, and the veteran presence that he brings to that locker room. So just up and down, this roster took a big hit this offseason, and Aaron Rodgers isn't getting any younger. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is still great, still, in my opinion, a top 3 quarterback in the league, but he's not getting any better. He's not going to be moving any better. And we obviously know he has an injury history. Last year he wasn't really injured, but this is a whole new year with a worse offensive line. He's probably going to take more hits. These wide receivers are going to have a tougher time getting open, so he's going to stay in that pocket a little longer. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with them, but I honestly give him no shot of making the NFC Championship this year.
Yeah, but he does take shrooms before games, so who knows, bro. Dame, let me stick with you. Bullish or bearish? The Chiefs make the AFC Conference Championship without Tyreek Hill.
Oof. I'm going to go bullish because I do believe the Chiefs can make it there. I do think they have a talented enough roster. And obviously Patrick Mahomes at the helm. This is kind of the same thing when we were talking about Tom Brady and the Bucks. I'm not gonna doubt Patrick Mahomes. He's the best quarterback in the league, and if you think different, then I just can't really respect your football opinion. Unless you say like Josh Allen, then I'll understand. But you got to give me a good argument. But anyways, they do lose Tyreek Hill, but if you look at the games that Patrick Mahomes had without Tyreek Hill, I mean, the numbers are monster. He had like a 400-yard game. He had like 350-yard games with like 3 touchdowns and stuff. So he's perfectly fine without Tyreek Hill. They added Juju, obviously. They added Scantley from the Green Bay Packers as their deep threat. They added Sky Moore in the draft. They added Isaiah Pacheco as the running back in the draft as well. So they did put pieces around where he has kind of more options instead of just that one option. Obviously, Travis Kelce is still there. That offensive line is stout now. I know they had their offensive line a couple years ago in the Super Bowl was really bad, but now with Orlando Brown, Joe Tooney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and I forgot their right tackle as well. I think they approved that this offseason too. Like their offensive line is stout as well. And they had 2 first-round picks this draft as well, and they went defense with both. They added Trey McDuffie at the cornerback spot, which was a big weakness for them. A lot of receivers are obviously getting open. A big reason why they lost the NFC Championship game to the Bengals. Guys just weren't able to cover those wide receivers. And they added that guy with the Greek really long last name. I forgot his name. Karl Lofakis or something like that. They added him off the edge as well, so that's a big get. I'm pretty sure they re-signed Melvin Gordon. They still have Chris Jones right in the middle of that defense. So that defense did improve a lot this offseason, something that was their weakness last season. But just overall, just adding these little kind of improvements on the offensive end after losing Tyreek Hill, I think will be enough when you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback and Andy Reid as your coach. So I'm very bullish on the Chiefs making the AFC Championship even without Tyreek Hill.
Ah, man, the Chiefs, like, it's kind of similar to the first one. Like, I've just been so struck by fear with this quarterback that I I don't want to go against him. But so here's the thing. I think there's two ways that people are going to take this question. There's the way that we're analyzing the question, where we're just talking about this season, and then there's the way that everyone else is going to take this question, which we know how this sports media machine is going to sensationalize, and it's like, is this the end of the Kansas City Chiefs' run in the AFC? Obviously, this was a big retool and reload year for this team. Like Dame had mentioned, the draft picks they had, George Karlaftis along the defensive line, Sky Moore in that receiving core, who really could have a bigger impact than I think most are expecting for a rookie wide receiver, and an offensive line that is much better than what it was in that Super Bowl run. Granted, like, they didn't have 3 or 4 out of the 5 starters from their Super Bowl win the year before that were in that Super Bowl game against the Buccaneers. So, like, there's that. Although Orlando Brown Jr., they do have to figure out that situation because he wants to get paid, but they can't necessarily give him that right long-term deal right now. So there are some issues there. But I think overall the Kansas City Chiefs, Andy Reid is still there, Patrick Mahomes is still there. You do still have a team. But I think because of what they lost this past offseason, here's my thing. I think in the future, once again, they'll be great. In terms of making back to the AFC Championship game, I kind of foresee them it really just depends, because even I stress a few of the lower teams in the AFC can properly challenge them. I know we don't think of the Colts as a challenge, but the Colts have actually played the Kansas City Chiefs really good when they've met up the last couple of years in the regular season in all their means. I think the Colts have beat them at least once. So you have Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines as an amazing 1-2 duo there. I think, it depends on what you think they'll do in the playoffs, but at least the Chargers have the offense to go against them. And the Bengals beat them last year. Granted, we could say, the Chiefs lost this game, they did this, they did that. Bengals still had to make that comeback, and that defense was unable to stop them. And I cannot say definitively the Kansas City Chiefs defense got better after this past offseason. They got some young pieces. They got some guys who could be really talented, but did they get better? So I'm actually going to be a little unique here. And I'm sorry, Patrick Mahomes, that I'm doing this. He's probably going to win MVP now that I've done this. You're welcome, Kansas City Chiefs fans. But I'm actually going to be bearish with the Chiefs making back to the AFC Championship game. I just think overall the AFC is a lot stronger this year than it has been in previous years. And I think the combination of teams in the AFC trying to peak versus the Chiefs having a little bit of a dip will be enough just for this year. Just for this year. I need to stress that, because I'm not going to overblow it. I think in the future, the Chiefs will be back to the Super Bowl plenty of times. Mahomes will win a couple more championships, you hope. I hope so, because goddamn, he's so talented. I think that will be the case. But for now, I think this season, I think it's just a little bit unlucky. So I'm going to go with the hot take. I'm going to say bearish on the Kansas City Chiefs making it back to the Super Bowl.
All right. Well, AFC Conference Championship.
Oh, my bad. AFC Conference Championship. I mean, Super Bowl 2, technically speaking, with the logic. But to your question, yeah.
All right, Jurg, let me stick with you. Bullish or bearish? Jonathan Taylor will be an MVP candidate.
Ooh, MVP candidate. I mean,
in fantasy, he sure is.
Oh, I mean, no, he might be the fantasy MVP. It's so difficult because it's such. I know people are probably sick of this, but it is a quarterback award. Let's be real here. It is a quarterback award. I can't think off the top of my head when the last time a non-quarterback won the award was. I think Adrian Peterson, I think he won the MVP award back during his 2,000-yard rushing season. I'm sure he had to. And I think before him was LaDainian Tomlinson. So in our football watching lifetimes, at least from what we remember vaguely, like, only 2 running backs have won it since. So Jonathan Taylor, I mean, there's at least a precedent for him, but I just don't know, man, because yes, he's the engine of that Colts team, as we saw what happened last season when Jonathan Taylor was not going, that Colts offense was stagnant. But I just think it's really against him. Like, when we say candidate, what, like, does that mean he'll be what, like top 3, top 5 in voting? Like, that's kind of what I'm.
Let's make it interesting. Top 3.
Top 3. I don't want to be, but I'm gonna have to say bearish, just because I think even if he has an outstanding season, 1, I think there's going to be plenty of quarterbacks that do good this season, but also 2, I think people are going to look at Derrick Henry and the season he's going to have. And if Derrick Henry has a close to, and if not surpasses 2,000 rushing yards again, then I think people are going to, no matter how good of a season Jonathan Taylor is having, it's going to be second to Derrick Henry. So I got to say bearish for now, because I think it just depends on also what Derrick Henry can do. If Derrick Henry's lost a step and Jonathan Taylor even takes another step, maybe. Because Jonathan Taylor is tied. Like, he's in the top 4, top 5 in terms of running backs for most rushing touchdowns in the first 2 seasons of his career. He's been phenomenal out of the gate. But I think there are just too many factors going against him this season. But if the Colts do win the AFC South and he does get close to that magic number of 2K, I think he will have a chance, to say the very least. 2,000 rushing yards is like the baseline for a running back to get into MVP consideration, which is like it's so unfair that has to be the case because it's not easy. It's not easy to do that, but that's what you got to do. You gotta lead your team. The team needs to be double-digit win team, and you got to be better than Derrick Henry this season. And that's a wait and see situation in and of itself with Henry and what the Tennessee Titans could be in 2022. So for now, I gotta say bearish, but I do love Jonathan Taylor. I really do.
Yeah, I'm gonna be bearish as well. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor had a fantastic season last year. Taking nothing away from him, but it's just really hard to duplicate a season that he had. He obviously led the league in rushing, led the league in rushing touchdowns. He had a great receiving year as well, and he really carried that Colts team to where they were at. It's just Carson Wentz kind of brought him down. And logic says, he had that great of a season. You bring in Matt Ryan, quarterback improvement, like he's going to be better. But I view it as they'll be throwing the ball more. I think Michael Pittman is going to take a huge step this year. They'll be throwing the ball more, so there'll be less running opportunities for him. Obviously, like I said, it's hard to duplicate something like that. I think other running backs, like the Jurg mentioned, Derrick Henry is going to have a huge season as long as he stays healthy. Then you still have guys like Najee Harris, Christian McCaffrey if he stays healthy, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, guys like that. Like they have so many other running backs that can have a season like Jonathan Taylor had last year, and they'll probably be higher than Jonathan Taylor did because voters like new things and stuff. So, and then just the main point is that it's mostly a quarterback award, and there's so many good quarterbacks with so many great offenses that it really will take a special season by any running back, not just Jonathan Taylor, to be in the top 3 of the MVP votes. Just off the top of my head, you have guys like Josh Allen, who's the favorite right now, Russell Wilson, that new offense with Jerry Jeudy and Sutton and KJ Hamler and Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. Like, he's going to put up some great numbers as well. And then obviously Mahomes, like let's not forget that. Justin Herbert, and with that Chargers offense, Matthew Stafford, like I go on and on with all these quarterbacks who could honestly just have a great season and probably still be ahead of a running back that has a great season, because the running back needs to have a special season in order to even be in the MVP consideration. So just based on the position he plays and how hard it is to replicate what he did last year, I'm going to be bearish on him being an MVP candidate next year. Well, this upcoming year.
All right. Let's move on. Dame, let me stick with you, brother. All right, this one's going to be a little fun, I guess, for Dame. The Jets will win 5 or more games this season. And if you think 5, that means you're bullish. So, yeah, the Jets won 5 or more games this season.
Here's the thing. It all really depends on Zach Wilson, when he comes back. Because preseason, before he got hurt, I thought the Jets are going to win 5 or 6 games. So I'd be, I guess, bullish. I do think Zach Wilson at most is going to miss week 1 or 2.
Right.
And week 2 really is a big one because they play the Browns without Deshaun Watson. I thought that would be a win with Zach Wilson there. So that's going to be interesting. But I do think he might come back for that game because they already are showing him in promos for week 1 and stuff. And I know they showed him walking at practice without a limp or anything. So I see maybe week 2 as his comeback date. So I'm going to go bullish. Because, like I said, I had them 5 or 6 wins in the preseason, and if Zach Wilson is 1 or 2, I'm still going to have faith in them to win 5 or 6 games. This team is obviously very improved on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. They're very young, though, so I do think 6 is maybe their ceiling. But I just don't see them losing more than 5 games because of how much they improved and how hard this team plays. Robert Saleh does have them playing hard. I know I've really shat on Robert Saleh in the past, and I still do. I don't think he's going to be the quarterback that the Jets ever do make real strides moving forward, because I think you need an offensive guy. But if you need a coach or a leader to have your players playing hard, I think Robert Saleh's the guy, and I think that's what they'll be doing all year. You have Breece Hall, Michael Carter in the backfield, Zach Wilson, and Joe Flacco is arguably one of the best backups in the league, so I think that they won't be like an embarrassment with him there. Obviously, Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis, Denzel Mims is still on the roster. They're keeping him. They said they didn't get what they wanted, so there's that. Braxton Berrios has a great connection with Zach Wilson, so you have all the weapons there to really be successful. And then on defense, you have an extremely improved secondary, something that They were arguably the worst in the league last year. Your cornerback 1 from last year is now your cornerback 3. You added a guy in free agency and then used the 4th overall pick on one as well. So the Jets team as a whole, and then let's not forget that Carl Lawson, their best pass rusher, is coming back from a huge injury last year as well. So just from offseason additions and guys come back from injury, I think this team is improved on both sides of the ball, and I will be bearish on the 5 wins because I think 6 is their ceiling and 5 is their floor. Honestly, something like that.
So you're down on it.
No, I think they'll win 5 games at minimum.
So okay, so all right. So you said bearish at the end. All right. So
no,
bullish.
I meant bullish. Yeah, my bad.
Copy. Jurg?
I'm fully bullish. I am all the way in hoping that the Jets actually do pretty well this season. This is without looking at the schedule right in front of me, so it'll be tough. But I think at the best case scenario for the Jets this season could actually be like a 7-win team, which for the Jets to be 7-10 this season in the new 17 game format, considering what the last couple of years have been, I don't think it's too bad. Especially because I think there are some teams that are just kind of absolutely collapse throughout the rest of the NFL. I think Zach Wilson, it sucks that he's going to miss the very beginning portions of the season, but I think it's right. I hope the big thing for me, and this is where part of the prediction goes to, I know we're kind of like talking about the roster now and stuff, but we do have to keep in mind Zach Wilson coming back. Don't rush him coming back, because I think if they rush him, if he has to play injured, I don't think that's going to be good. Don't Baker Mayfield the situation up. Don't be the Cleveland Browns, which I know for some people, like being the Jets versus being the Cleveland Browns for a while now, it's kind of been the same thing. But don't be the Cleveland Browns. Don't force your young quarterback who you drafted very highly to play through an injury for absolutely no reason in the world. Don't be stupid. Let him come back on the proper timeline. It's also, I think, like a relatively tough tough way that the Jets are starting their schedule. I know they have that Browns game, but you're starting against the entirety of the AFC North, and then you also have the Dolphins and the Packers. Those are the first 6 games for the Jets this season. Is it really the worst thing in the world if Zach Wilson misses those games in terms of like some of the defenses he'd be facing, such as the Ravens secondary and that Steelers pass rush, like, and the Browns pass rush? I don't think it's a bad thing, personally speaking, if Zach Wilson, if he comes back against maybe a bit of weaker competition on paper. But like Dame said, I think now that the offense has a lot more depth on it, I think it's a lot more weapons for Mike LaFleur and that offensive coaching staff to really help play around with. And I think the offensive line, I know Mekhi Becton being out sucks, but I think you have 2 very good interior guys in Elijah Vera Tucker and Laken Tomlinson. I don't know which tackle spot he'd be at, but I hope Max Mitchell, the young guy that the Jets drafted, I think it was in the 4th round. Guy became high on late in the draft process. I think it was an amazing depth pick for the Jets. I hope he gets some playing time for the Jets at some point this season, because I think he could be a really good offensive lineman, or maybe closer to the end to let him develop a little bit before getting him into game time action. But I think there's that. Like Dame said, the defense, Carl Lawson is coming back. They added some secondaries they added some veterans in the secondary, excuse me. I think the linebacking core, CJ Mosley, can be healthy, which he was not the first couple of years of his Jets career, but you saw the impact he can still make defensively in terms of just being a leader there, which I think this defense needs. There is some good to like about the Jets, and like I gave in my personal AFC East a couple weeks ago, I don't think the Jets should be last in the division this year. I think they should at least be 3rd, which I think would be a big step up. I think the weapons are there for them to take a step. I think Zach Wilson can have a big year. Big fan of him in terms of his off the field exploits, but in all actuality, like Zach Wilson has, like, he's made strides. I think he has a chance this year to prove to people why he was drafted so highly. So I'm gonna hope the best for the Jets, in part because the 2 podcasts I do, all my co-hosts are Jets fans, so I want them to be happy. So I'm hoping for the best here, boys. I'm bearish. I'm all in on the Jets not being bottom of the barrel this year in the AFC East in general.
All right, good enough. Jurg, I'm gonna stick with you. The Minnesota Vikings are able to sneak into the playoffs.
The Minnesota Vikings, one of the two to three teams in this league that I just love talking about the most. I'm going to be interested to see if one certain team is what Chris brings up later, and this just to spite me. I'm bearish on it. I know we didn't give our official playoff teams yet, really, but I mean we kind of alluded to it based off of what our overall divisional breakdowns were. But of course, we could also release that on the IG page for those of you that follow us or that don't follow us yet. If you don't, SomeWhat.Sports on Instagram. Be sure to follow us there, because you will see our weekly predictions there. The weekly predictions will be coming back once the season starts, and that's something we'll be happy about because the page will be booming again. But In regards to the Minnesota Vikings, I just don't see it. I think that defense is young, and it's not the kind of young where it's high draft picks coming into place. It's Pat Peterson is essentially with a Walker out there in the secondary, and their safety that they have. Why his name has escaped me? Harrison, who's been one of the best safeties in the NFL for the last decade or so. I think they are both like Harrison's still like really great, but I think he's an injury away. He's one of those hard hitting safeties. He's like an injury away from not being at the same level. Pat Pete hasn't been at his like same peak year level for a while now. Not the biggest fan of the linebacking core on that team. I think there's one good linebacker, and then everyone else is solid. The pass rush unit, which used to be a strength of that team, is kind of taken a step back the last couple of years. Aside from Danielle Hunter, who do you have the biggest faith in on that team? And the offense. Look, at the end of the day, I know there are plenty of weapons there, but I'm just not going to give any faith to Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings when he's the quarterback. I'm just not. Maybe the coach that we talked about, because we have done episodes in the past, ladies and gentlemen. If you go on the Somewhat Sports YouTube for the full catalog of what we've done, we have had an episode earlier in the offseason where we talked about the coaches and the impact they could make for each team. I think Kevin O'Connell is a good shout for someone who could have a pretty good year. I think he could do a lot. I hope Justin Jefferson has an amazing year for himself personally. Adam Thielen kind of looked a little bit slowed down last season. You hope he could be a good number 2. And of course, they added the man himself, the myth, the legend, Jalen Reagor, recently, as of yesterday, onto the team. So we'll see what they could do there. But I just don't think it's playoff team. I know the NFC is technically wide open, but I think the 49ers and Cardinals, I still give them an edge. I give the Saints an edge. And depending on who the second team in the NFC East could be, I might give that second team in the NFC East the edge over the Vikings. I just don't see them like as wide open as the NFC technically is on paper. I still don't think the Minnesota Vikings make the playoffs. So there it is on the Vikings. So I am fully thumbs down like the Emperor in the Roman Colosseum. I am bearish on the Vikings this season.
Yeah, I agree. I'm bearish on them as well. We're agreeing a lot, but I'm bearish on them as well. I see this team as around 500 team, 7-8, 8-7, something like that, and I just don't think that's gonna be enough. Just a couple teams you mentioned as well. You got Eagles, Cowboys, and you got Bucks, Rams, Cardinals, 49ers, and I think maybe the Saints could be even better than them as well. I think there'll be one or two teams that are just outside the playoff bubble. I know they got a new a new head coach from the Rams. And whenever you go from the Sean McVay coaching tree, like it's always great. But that doesn't change Kirk Cousins being your quarterback. You have a ceiling with him as your quarterback, and that ceiling is 500. You can have Jets, you can have Adam Thielen, you can have Dalvin Cook. It does not matter. Especially even worse when your defense is pretty bad. I can't even name most of the defensive players, to be honest. That just tells you that it's just a bad defense. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to Kirk Cousins being your quarterback. You have a ceiling there, and your ceiling is that 500 mark, and that usually year after year, even with the expanded rosters, around 500 or just over 500 just doesn't get you in. You need to be better than that, and I just think that's where the Vikings are right now.
Fellas, these three I think will entice some decent conversation. Damn, I'm gonna stick with you. One of the 49ers and or the Cardinals missed the playoffs.
I'm bearish on that. I think both of them make the playoffs. You have three wildcard spots now, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yes, so I think they'll take 2 out of the 3, and I think one of the other NFC East teams will take the other. Both of these teams have loaded rosters. The only question with the 49ers is their quarterback, but clearly they're keeping Jimmy G. So even if Trey Lance struggles, I don't think they're gonna keep him in there because the team is built to win now. They're not a rebuilding team. So they'll just put Jimmy G in there, who's obviously extremely familiar with the situation, has led them to so many playoff wins and even a Super Bowl. So I don't think the 49ers will lose a beat there. And it comes with the Cardinals, they always just start off so hot. And hopefully this is the year after Kyle Murray got paid that he kind of stays healthy and this team doesn't fall off a wagon in the second half of the season. They improved that defense. They added Marquise Brown, which obviously helps Kyle Murray in that offense as well. It adds another element to them, that kind of deep threat that they didn't have because DeAndre Hopkins is kind of a short, medium kind of guy. Catches slants, fades, and stuff like that, but he doesn't run that deep ball and takes the top off the defense like a Hollywood Brown would. So I'm not really worried about the Cardinals. I think they'll be okay. They'll be good enough to get one of those wild card spots. And then the 49ers, there was a chance for them to miss the playoffs. But with this past week, I think it was Monday that came out that they're restructuring Jimmy G's deal and keeping him. I think that basically solidifies that they'll make the playoffs, because even if Trey Lance struggles, which there are a lot of mixed rumors about coming out of his training camp because they're saying that he's been very inconsistent, the 49ers aren't going to wait around and hope that he turns it around. They have a roster when now Jimmy G will be in there like nothing and they won't miss a beat. And I think that'll be good enough compared to all these other NFC teams to make the playoffs.
So overall, on the idea itself, I am bullish. Oh, wait, you're saying if one of them misses it. So I'm bearish on the idea of one of them missing, I should say. Um, but I'm going to be, let me just play devil's advocate here, of why I could be potentially bullish on the idea that one of those two teams could end up missing the playoffs. I think when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers, I kind of detailed this when we talked about the two West divisions on a recent episode. For me personally, I know we said like to kind of leave out injuries as a part of this, but I still think injuries are kind of an issue when it comes to this team. And like their top three receiving options have never been healthy for like a full 17. I know it's just recently became 17 games, but a full 16, 17 game season. But even aside from that, I think the fact that they lost Lincoln Tomlinson in free agency and Alex Mack due to retirement, I think that's two really big holes that they are going to expect these young guys on the offensive line to have to figure out here very quickly. So I think it could be tough there. The defensive line, I just don't see enough consistency there aside from Nick Bosa. And look, I know Nick Bosa is an absolute beast on the field, but there isn't enough for me next to him that's been proven to be consistent. Eric Armstead, who got that big contract extension a couple years ago, that kind of played a part into them having to trade DeForest Buckner because they chose to pay Armstead and not Buckner after 2019. Well, 2020 he only had 3.5 sacks, and in 2021 he had 6 sacks. Yes, he played better last year than the year before, but I need more from the guy who I paid you instead of paying DeForest Buckner, first and foremost. So I need a little bit more there. Linebacking core, I have no qualms or complaints about, ultimately speaking. I'm not going to say a single bad thing in the world about a linebacking core that includes Dre Greenlaw, who I think is a relatively underrated guy, and Fred Warner, one of the best linebackers in the game. So I'm not going to say anything there. But I think the defensive back crew, I think, has always been the weakest part of the Kyle Shanahan era San Francisco 49ers. And that doesn't change for me personally. At least with the defensive line, you have a Nick Bosa. Whereas in the defensive back crew, you don't have that number one corner that's there. You have the veteran Jimmy Ward, who's been there for a while. You have a couple guys that you hope can perform, but there's no definitive number one cornerback on this team or like safety that's a bona fide stud. It's a mix of young guys and veterans who someone needs to be the number one. And maybe because of the way Shanahan schemes up the defense and how he has his DC handle it, maybe does that not make as big of a difference as we think it does? Hey, like I hope so, but I think ultimately this is the part where I disagree with Dame with. I think because of what they had to trade to get to Trey Lance, I think Trey Lance is going to get a little bit of a longer leash than we're expecting here in terms of his performances. I understand the idea that this team is in a Super Bowl window, and that's why they kind of reworked it with Jimmy G, and I get it. But I think part of it is also like the way they can also keep that Super Bowl window extended is if Trey Lance can be the guy. I think Trey Lance is going to have a little bit longer of a leash than I think we're expecting him to have because they need to make that pick work. With what they traded up for, with what they invested to get him, that pick needs to work out. And if he isn't the bona fide guy for 17 games this year, you can kind of forgive it because you still have Jimmy G, but you need to see something out of Trey Lance this season. Like the only excuse that you don't is if he like, again, God forbid, of course, but if he tears something within the first couple weeks of the season, then you go back to Jimmy G. But if he's healthy, like you need to see something out of Trey Lance here. And that level of inconsistency that Dame is talking about, like that maybe that could be part of a reason why they almost fall out. Because remember, and I had faith in this team even when they struggled last season, but the 49ers were struggling for the first half of last season. They were a below 500 or were a 500 team at about the halfway point of last year, and then they really turned it on towards the end of the season. This season, again, it's so hard because, yes, the NFC is wide open, but at the same time, I just don't like the idea of a team starting out multiple times, even keeled throughout the first half of the season and then turning on, especially because you look at some of the non-division games they have. They're facing the entirety of the AFC West. What is their record going to be? I think their record in those games is really going to make a big difference. Like I know we talk about how the AFC games are not important. You go 0-4 in those 4 games in the AFC West. That means a lot. That could be a leg up in terms of just other wins that other teams get because they have an easier schedule in terms of other conference games. Or if you're like there are like a million tiebreakers, but eventually one of the tiebreakers will be against out of conference or similar foes. and maybe that could screw you over at the end of the day when it comes to making the playoffs. So I could see a realm of possibility where the 49ers do miss the playoffs there. And then once again, I'm playing devil's advocate for both sides. So let me just go to the Cardinals real quick. At the end of the day, it's Cliff Kingsbury. At the end of the day, I've said this before, I've said it again, Def Taxes and Cliff Kingsbury's teams will always choke in the second half of the season. They did it last year. They did it the year before. They did it the year before. He did it every single year in college too. So this does not surprise me. I think overall the Arizona Cardinals, now if I were to get to them, not having DeAndre Hopkins, for the first 6 games of the season is going to be big. It's going to be big expectations for that receiving core to step up. I think the offensive line, it's not ideal. This is a team that I think really should have gone after offensive line way more than they did, and they didn't. I don't like that. The loss of Chandler Jones is big because I just don't see anyone else off the top on the defensive line that I have faith in. I'm sorry, J.J. Watt, but even healthy the last couple of years, he hasn't looked like the J.J. Watt of old, which, I mean, you're probably not going to get that 33, but you at least, he should at least be able to get 10 sacks. And I don't know if he's going to do that. They have some young defensive pieces that they've just misused. Zaven Collins had such an up and down rookie season, more downs than ups. And then while Isaiah Simmons had a better year 2 than he did year 1, I think you got to expect him to take that big leap. And sort of similar to the 49ers, at least they have a number 1 safety in Buda Baker, and I do like Byron Murphy Jr. personally. And maybe they're going to get lucky because they were able to trade for Trayvon Mullen Jr., which was an absolute stupid move by the Raiders. I don't understand why they just randomly traded him, but, to each his own. Look, I think there are a lot. Of course, overall, for me personally, I'm bearish on the idea that they could both miss, or that one of them will miss it. I think both should make it. But there is more than a realm of possibility where one of those teams can miss it just for the season, just for the reasons that I laid out here. So there's that.
All right, Jurg, I'm going to stick with you here. I think we got 2 more. 2 more, I believe. The Miami Dolphins make the playoffs. Bullish or bearish?
Bearish. I'm bearish. Again, the AFC is so stacked. The AFC West, while it can potentially cannibalize itself, I think at least 2 of those teams at minimum are going to make it, aside from the division winner. So you have 2 of the 3 spots there, and I'm giving the other wild card spots either the Bengals or the Ravens, whoever doesn't end up winning the division there. So I have the Miami Dolphins missing out. Look, I get it that they added to that offense, and I know that offense could be potentially great with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, but there are still a lot of questions about the offensive line, and that I think will be the biggest thing for Mike McDaniel. Yes, it is a staple of the Shanahan coaching tree to be able to have an amazing run game, which Miami can have, but you also need some good offensive linemen there. And if there's one thing you could always say about Kyle Shanahan, he's always had good offensive linemen on his teams. Yeah, Alex Mack, I just mentioned him for the 49ers. Remember, he was also the center for the Matt Ryan MVP season that the Atlanta Falcons had when Kyle Shanahan was there. So that's a guy that Kyle Shanahan had all the faith in the world in. There's no Pro Bowl caliber offensive lineman on this team before the season. Now, Teron Armstead, maybe can he change the math there at least a little bit? We'll see. But the offensive line is 5 guys. It's not just 1. So it's going to be a big thing there to me to what they could do. The running game as well. Again, you don't really need a big name running back in that kind of offense. But the running game, I think it's like a wait and see on what McDaniel can really do. And even, again, this is not even just attacking Tua, because I think Tua is going to have some unfair expectations set on him. But that defense, I didn't like when they, it wasn't this past offseason, it was the offseason before, when they just let go of Kyle Van Noy for no reason. I think that was a really bad precedent that Brian Flores has then set up for the team in terms of just letting a guy go like that. Yes, they do still have a pretty strong secondary because they have 2 of the top, whatever you want to say, corners in the game, in Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. And I do like Javon Holland as a safety. I really do. I think he was a draft pick that I loved from his respective draft 2 years ago for the Miami Dolphins. But the rest of the team, again, it's veterans along this linebacking core that they need to prove themselves, or in the defensive backfield, or in the defensive line that just need to prove themselves. There is they recently got Trey Flowers, the former Detroit Lion and New England Patriot, who has done nothing ever since he got that big contract from Detroit years ago. The veteran Melvin Ingram is on this team. Can either of them make an impact in the pass rush? Will Christian Wilkins continue to be a valuable piece to that defensive line for the Dolphins? Not much of a pass rusher, but can he still be a great run stuffer for that team, especially in that division where at least the Patriots have a running game. The Jets have 2 really good young running backs, and the Buffalo Bills have a running quarterback. You have Jerome Baker, who is probably like the jewel of that young defense, but can he have a really big year for himself? The defense even without questioning Tua, I think the defense just has so many questions. And can McDaniel and his coaching staff make them overperform on defense like we're expecting them to overperform on offense? I don't know, and I don't think so. So I'm going to say no. I think the Dolphins missed the playoffs. Not by a lot. I think it'll be close. I think they'll be like they've been up to the final game of the season the last couple of years. I'm going to think that again. I'd say they're not out of the playoff on until like week 17, 18, but I do not see year one of McDaniel, the Miami Dolphins making the playoffs.
I don't see them making the playoffs either. It's two things. It has to do with the Dolphins and then just the AFC being loaded. I'll start with the AFC. It's just the AFC West. You have four teams that could easily all make the playoffs and take up the divisional and the three wildcard spots. And then you have the North. You have the Bengals. You have the Ravens. So one of those teams will most likely be a wildcard spot. You have the Browns as well if they can kind of ride the wave until Deshaun Watson comes back. So that just has to do with the AFC. It's a lot of wildcard spots that have to be taken that I think they're all better than the Dolphins. And then it comes down to the Dolphins with Tua. We've seen the clips, but I'm not too big on clips because, I mean, you could show one bad play and then not show the other 10 great ones. But my concern is his arm strength. It's just these deep passes that he's not getting to Tyreek Hill. It's something that Mahomes was able to do with ease. And that's why they kind of unlocked and went to Tyreek Hill's full potential. But obviously now they don't have it. With Tua, he doesn't have that kind of arm strength to lead Tyreek Hill. So I think that's going to be a problem. I hope it's not because I like Tua. I'm an Alabama guy. I like Tua. I like all players that come out of Bama, but it's hard for me to see him working well with a guy like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, two guys who need the ball thrown deep to them, and that's something not that Tua doesn't have. I think he's really good, a really good accurate passer in a short intermediate game. When it comes to the deep ball, I just don't think he has it. I don't know what it is. I know he's had a lot of injuries in his past, whether it's in college or the NFL. So that could be it because in college he did throw a pretty nice deep ball, but he's taken a lot of injuries since then. So I just don't think the Dolphins are led by the quarterback that can take them to the level they need to be at. And then compared to these other AFC teams that I kind of mentioned, whether it's the Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders, and Broncos, I don't think the Dolphins are better than either one of them. And I don't think they're better than the Ravens or the Bengals. So that kind of just, it's a process of elimination at that point. And I don't think they're better than any of those teams that are probably locked in to make the playoffs ahead of them.
All right, main event time, last one. All right, Dame, I'm going to stick with you since we ended with you. One of the Chargers, Ravens, or the Colts will be able to beat the Bills in a playoff game.
Chargers, Colts, and Ravens.
Ravens. One of them will be able to beat the Bills in the playoffs.
Yes, I'm bullish on this. I think all three of them can beat them. I'm gonna give the Colts the least shot because they have Matt Ryan.
Okay.
I think the Ravens are arguably could be going to Super Bowl this year. I haven't really decided on my pick yet, but I think the Ravens are absolutely stacked. Lamar Jackson's gonna be playing with a chip on his shoulder with this contract situation. I think he's gonna be going out with a point to prove. They obviously improved the defense. They improved the offense. So it's them. I just think their roster is just loaded from top to bottom, and they compete with anybody in the entire league. When it comes to the Chargers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Chargers, another team who arguably had the best offseason in the entire league with re-signing Mike Williams. You added offensive line help. I think they added a tight end as well. I forgot who it was. They obviously went crazy on the defense, adding Khalil Mack. They added a defensive tackle as well, and then signing J.C. Jackson. From top to bottom, this team and this front offense went crazy this offseason, really trying to maximize Justin Herbert's rookie contract and spending all the money now before they have to pay him. So that's another team that had an incredible offseason and just loaded from top to bottom and could beat anybody in the entire league. And when it comes to the Colts, that's just a team that scares everybody because of the way they play, that grit and grind kind of style of offense and defense as well. Their defense just takes the ball away from people. And we know that Josh Allen and the Bills, well, specifically Josh Allen, tends to get careless sometimes and turns the ball over, whether it's fumbles or picks. And the Colts are going to take advantage of that, and whether it's going to just bring the ball back to the offense, so they might even go score 6 by themselves. And then you just have Jonathan Taylor running it down your throat, down each and every single drive. it's going to be hard to get the ball back to Josh Allen for them to score points when Jonathan Taylor is running it for 5 yards here, running for 6 yards there, and keep moving the chains and keeping possession on the Colts side of the ball, and not letting Josh Allen and the Bills offense get into the rhythm that they love to get into. So I think each and every single one of the teams has a pretty good chance of beating the Bills. I'd give the Ravens the best shot, then the Chargers and the Colts. But I think all these teams have a great shot of upsetting the Bills when it comes to the playoffs.
I think the Chargers just signed Sony Michel, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I'm with Dame. Look. When we put the expectation on the Bills that this could potentially be a big like Super Bowl or bust kind of season for them, with saying that, it doesn't mean that they're the definitive favorite. They're going to dominate the AFC. It's not like the Rams in the NFC where there are a real lack of contenders. The Bills have a lot of teams that they could potentially have to go through. Like even with them, if you assume that they're going to get the number 1 seed, they're going to face 2 of the toughest teams in the league to go up against in the AFC playoffs. That's just how it is. That's just how stacked the AFC has become. With the teams you said specifically, Chris, I think the big thing for all those clubs and for them potentially being able to take down the Bills in the playoffs as of right now, unless we see a like I'm talking about a massive leap, is the running game. The Colts already almost did it a couple of years ago with Phillip Rivers at the quarterback with a rookie Jonathan Taylor. Remember, that was our first round of NFL playoff predictions that we did here for the pod, and we all did predict Bills, but I think from memory, I think I had the closest game for them. I think I had it being like a field goal game, and that's essentially what it was. The Colts were a throw away with Phillip Rivers and rookie Jonathan Taylor to beating the Bills in a playoff game. That same Bills team eventually went on to make the AFC Championship game and lose to the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Colts have the formula, and Frank Reich is there. He's been in the playoffs a couple times now. Like, that is a veteran coach team. That is a veteran quarterback in Matt Ryan. And that's a guy in Jonathan Taylor who has seen success against the Bills. Jonathan Taylor's kind of destroyed certain teams, and the Bills are a team where it's like he gets up for and he plays against them. Like them, I think the Patriots are like the 2 teams that come to mind. Ironically, both AFC East teams that he just like comes to play against. So we'll see what Jonathan Taylor could do there potentially. So the Colts definitely have a chance. The Los Angeles Chargers, and just from a pure firepower and what we're expecting of them, for you and me specifically, Chris, a couple weeks ago, we have them winning the AFC West. They should be able to challenge them. I think Justin Herbert can go throw for throw with Josh Allen. I think Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are a very good 1-2. It's an overall better 1-2 than what the Bills can throw out there. And I think the running back crew, while they don't have like that definitive bell cow back number 1, Austin Eckler, I think is a guy who can make it happen with receiving as well. I think if the Chargers can maybe establish a little bit more of a ground game, and maybe Sony Michel could be that touchdown machine, like just in the red zone, I think that'd be great. And of course, the defense. You need to have the defense that can match up to the Bills, because for all we say about the Bills offensively, that defense, even though they're a little bit dinged up, you have arguably the best all-around secondary in the National Football League with a pretty good front 7 there. That's big time. Lamar Jackson, he's faced the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs before. And remember, in that playoff game between the Ravens and the Bills, Lamar got hurt. And that was a close game. Again, we forget this. When the Bills made the AFC Championship game, they didn't dominate the competition. They won a 1-score game against the Colts. They won a 1-score game against the Ravens, who didn't have Lamar Jackson in the fourth quarter. Like, yes, the Bills to us are the favorite, but and I think Dame would agree with me here. They're not invincible. Yes, we might pick them to be the number 1 seed here, Dame, but this is not a team where it's like they're going to just march to the AFC Championship game in the Super Bowl. They have to earn it, because the competition they're facing, this is the hyperbole here. This might be the most stacked AFC that we have seen in quite some time. I know there have always been great quarterbacks in the AFC, but when we're talking about legitimate playoff caliber teams, what have we not mentioned? Like 10 teams in the AFC alone in this episode that can make the playoffs with only 7 spots available. Like, that's just absurd how deep this conference is. So, yeah, any of these teams could beat the Bills at the end of the day. Not just from the whole generic, it's a 1 game, anything can happen on Sunday, blah, 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 but because it's legitimate. I think, potentially speaking, any of these teams, a lot of these teams in the AFC could definitely beat the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs because they have the talent. Except the Denver Broncos, because I don't like Russell Wilson.
A little cheap shot there, especially after he just re-signed 5 years today.
Yeah, good for him. Good for him. Let Russ cook into a barely above 500 record and missing the playoffs.
Generational wealth, though. Man got 245 mil for 5 years. I don't know, something like that.
Hey, I don't hate getting the bag, but I'm not gonna pick you to make the playoffs just because you got the bag.
Hey man, let's ride, bro. Let's just ride.
Yeah, let's.
Such a dad.
Uh,
All right. Yeah, that'll do it for this week. What an episode! Just another version of Bullish or Bearish. We'll certainly come back to this game. But we figured because the NFL season starts next Thursday, we might as well keep it NFL related. I had fun listening to you guys' takes. Jurg and Dame, phenomenal job as always. Jurg, you had a masterful plug earlier in the show, but just remind the people again, where can they find us on the socials?
Of course. Ladies and gentlemen, you can follow us at SomeWhatSports on IG for the most recent updates for the pod. Because the NFL season is back, yes, the weekly predictions will be coming back in the beautiful formats that were made by a certain fearless leader on this show. And of course, we're going to be having that. We're probably within the next week or so. We're probably going to give our playoff teams as well. No word on that. I'm not the official person to say that, but we could potentially have that. NFL season just means it's time to get more active, and that's what the SomeWhatSports social media is going to be, almost at 100 followers, ladies and gentlemen. Help us get there. It's going to be a big milestone for the pod that we'd all greatly appreciate. And of course, speaking of greatly appreciate, you're listening to this show for a reason. Why don't you, like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Somewhat Spaced in Sports. And if you're on the go and your YouTube can't load, because trust me, YouTube does not load well in data, especially for longer stuff, ladies and gentlemen, the easiest way to do that is you go on Spotify, Somewhat Spaced in Sports on Spotify. Give us 5 stars, give us critiques and reviews, let us know, listen to the episode. We prefer if you listen to the whole thing, but if you only listen to for like a couple minutes, I'm pretty sure it still counts as a listen. Do that as well, ladies and gentlemen. But in all seriousness, for those of you that listen to the show on a weekly basis, thank you so much. It ain't easy listening to me on a weekly basis, but at least Chris and Dame are here to carry me in terms of the talent that they just naturally are. But keep listening to the show. The NFL season is going to come. We're going to have a lot of fun talking about that, especially because a month or two after that, basketball and hockey come in. Autumn is coming. Fall is the most fantastic time of the year. And just because it's the fall doesn't mean that we are falling as well. Somewhat Sports 2022 will rise to end off the year.
Wow. All right. Just
Incredible.
Yeah. Just incredible work. Don't know how to follow it up with that. But yeah, to all the listeners listening, if you love that outro by Jurg, you might as well subscribe. We appreciate you if you made it this far. And until next time, peace.